All right, everybody, welcome to another podcast here at Prof for Contractors. Super excited about today. We've been doing this series. We just started on the last podcast talking about family contracting businesses, different aspects of them. We're talking about, on the last one, some of the mindset shifts that we have to have. We're going to touch on some of that today, but other areas we're going to be covering off is like succession planning and how to go about doing that. What are some of the struggles? What are some of the things that have to be put in place? And I got two amazing people with me today, father and son. We got Steve and Brad Vandermeulen. And I'll just have you guys introduce yourself. Steve, maybe just introduce who you are, what kind of business you have. And then Brad, I'll get you to add to that, like your role and things of that nature. And let's just get this thing rock and rolling. Bring it on.
Steve Vandermeulen, 57 years old, started the business in 97, and I have a plumbing contracting business in Peterborough, Ontario, Canada.
Sweet. I love it. Over to you, Brad.
All right. Well, I'm Brad, Steve's son. I'm 31 and have sort of been involved off and on in the business since its inception. I've been full-time with it, I guess, for the past 4 years now. I think it is. So, and yeah, it's been great. It's been
awesome.
Good working with Dad, and yeah.
I love it. So we met, Steve, we met a while ago, right? Where did we meet? Do you remember? It was at
Desco down in Oshawa.
That's
Desco,
right.
You did a preliminary sort of draw people in.
Yeah.
That's the first time we met, and actually you're the first guy I heard that hit every point that I was searching for. Mm-hmm. And kind of, I had the same mindset as you, but you were able to articulate what I could only think.
That's I really appreciate you saying that. I don't know if that's because of the beer that we were drinking, but hey, you can do whatever it takes, right? Well, Let me just say this. So we're going to be talking about, yes, the topic's about family businesses. Yes, we're going to be touching on succession planning. We're going to be talking about, a lot of aspects of the business. But I want everybody to know that's listening in, and there's a very good chance I'm going to change the name of this. But again, this is a no bullshit podcast for contractors. We're bringing tips and tricks and insights. We're going to be real because I think that's one of the biggest things that's missing out there. Period. Along with it being specific to the trades. For those of you that don't know me, I'm the founder and owner of Prof for Contractors, and we help contractors really get their profits to pay for the freedom. I'll get Steve in a second. I'll get you to talk about what were some of those things that resonated with you, and then we'll feather that into like what the hell does that got to do with handing over a family business or even looking at that, right? Which it has everything to do with. But so Prof for Contractors, we provide the systems, the tools, the insights, the community. From hundreds and thousands of contractors like-minded to really get them to become champion CEOs, business owners, and really get them off the tools, even though they might be, and odds are they're really, really good at it. I know I was, I know you were, Steve, but to get them to become champion CEO business owners. So if that's not up your alley, if you don't like the no bullshit style, probably a good time for you to be turning off this podcast. If you're into it, then I'll be referencing for you guys to get some tools and some of those tricks and insights down below. You can click on the links below. So let's get it going. So Steve, when we first met, what were some of those things that resonated with you? Like, and relate it back to, if you can, around like some of the challenges that you were having. So tell us a little bit about what was I saying that was like, man, he's in my head.
I'd love to tell you exactly. It was such a while ago, I can't remember. Mm-hmm. I remember you talking about team, our team working. I remember you talking about like being a businessman, not a tradesman. Mm-hmm. And I can't remember all the stuff, Andrew.
Yeah, no problem. So
the struggle at the time was I'd sort of come off the tools. I was working full-time in my office, and I had my brother just joining me in my office at the time. But I was still working phenomenal hours.
Profits weren't there.
Profits were not there.
Didn't have a life.
No. I was going through a difficult personal time.
Yeah.
About the same time.
You were wearing so many different hats.
Yeah.
Right.
And I've learned so much since then that, if I had learned that right from day one starting my business, I'd be where I was now within 5 to 10 years.
Yeah,
instead of
totally, dude.
30 years getting there.
Totally. And so, I mean, Brad, maybe this is a great segue for you. I mean, when you look back at, like, how long has the business been around, Steve?
1997.
Okay, so Brad, how old would you have been back then, roughly?
Would have been 9 when he started.
Okay, perfect. So, I mean, guys, this is about getting, like, everybody listening, this is about getting personal. It's about getting real, okay? So, Brad, what was that like? Like, what were some of the things that you saw as a son, whether it's through your teenage years or whatever, that you saw some of the struggles of your dad going through, as far as the things that you either impacted you or that you saw from a perspective of even from your dad and your mom, things of that nature. Like, what did you see from your eyes?
Well, I remember as a kid actually not really seeing Dad too much, just because he was always working, and he'd work service calls during the day. In the evenings, he'd go and build houses. I remember actually even before starting the business, I remember being happy if he got laid off when he was working for
No way.
a plumber at the time, because to me as a kid, that meant that I would see him a little more. And I obviously didn't understand any of the financial aspects of that, but it just meant that I got to see him some more. So, and this is going back, even before when he started the business, he's always been a very hard worker. So
interesting. So amazing, eh? So thinking even back before you owned a business, like, man, it's great Dad's laid off now. I can have actually some time with him. Totally.
And it wasn't like I never had any time with him, but
but it's just I want more, right?
More of him, yeah.
Yeah, totally. When you look at it from the eyes of your dad being present, like when he was running his business, did it ever feel like, I'm not trying to put words in your mouth or your head, but did it feel like sometimes he wasn't always present?
I think I kind of got used to it. I wouldn't say that it was a particular feeling that way, because it was sort of just the way things were.
Yeah.
And there were certain periods where sort of things worked out in a way that we did have more time together. When I was going to high school, he used to always drive me to the bus stop. So I'd get to see him, we'd chat every morning and every afternoon when he picked me up. But quite often after, we got home, he'd still have to go and do some more work again.
Right.
But there were ways that we had a lot more time together too. So.
Right. So, and then on coming back over to you, Steve, I mean, as far as we don't go as deep or as light as you want on this, right? By the way, you guys aren't aware of any of the questions I'm asking, and that's on purpose, okay? So, like, Steve, look at your marriage. Was there impacts on the marriage because of, like, the business cash flow? What were some of the impacts on the marriage side of things?
Well, I'm no longer married, so that's an impact. Yeah, definitely, for sure. I'm partly, well, we all are. I carry some of the blame for that because, again, I wasn't always there within the marriage. At the time, we weren't really making money, so there was stresses there. We were living in our line of credit instead of above it. So yeah, definitely it affected the marriage. It affected my sons. It affected everything.
Yeah. I'm glad you guys are sharing this because I know there's a lot of people. And as I'm listening to this, I'm having flashbacks, right? Like you can't, I said this on the last podcast that people that aren't business owners in the trades, people that aren't business owners, period, but especially in the trades, they don't really understand it's hard. It's almost impossible for them to understand the challenges that we go through, right? Like one of the things that's different about the trades is that part of what is allowing you to move forward is your skill set as a tradesperson. But yet you gotta wear all these new hats that nobody's ever shown you how to wear. And you're not even aware of some of the hats. You're just doing, you know? So it's great that you guys are sharing this, because I know on my end it was very similar. I mean, Steve, correct me if I'm wrong. I don't think, Brad, you felt this way at all, but our intention as fathers we don't look at fatherhood and go, oh, my goal is not to be around as much as possible.
It's our intention as fathers or men, I think, is ingrained in us to provide for a family.
Yes.
But I sometimes think we use it as an excuse, because our real self is to create, to build, to work. And we just flog that off to take care of that sort of guilt. That's our base, but we never intend to. It's just who we are as people.
Mm-hmm.
But speaking to Brad, at the time, I probably did not catch how much I was ignoring my sons.
Mm-hmm.
I caught it more later, and I tried to make efforts to spend more time, but that's after the fact too. It's not at the time. It's after. But I do. I carry guilt because of it.
Yeah, well, and go ahead, Brad.
I was gonna say, I definitely kind of remember that and I sort of, I guess, probably attributed it to the business doing better. But I definitely remember sort of into my teens spending more and more time with you after you'd sort of started and established the business. And there was some more time that we started spending together after the initial kind of startup.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we did, Brad. Once the business got rolling better, I did make a real effort to spend time with you and Matt and the family. So but there was a period where I just wasn't there, and I remember that. I'd leave in the morning, come back at night, and you'd be in bed. That was it till Sundays. Never worked Sundays.
Right.
That was always family day.
Awesome. So let's talk a little bit about Brad. You came into this business. How long? You said 4 years, right?
Well, it's a little bit of a gray area, because I think I was doing service calls when I was about 10 on occasion with them.
Nice.
But and I did work a few summers in my teens in between school, and then I suppose my parents always pushed me to go to university. So I went to Trent, actually, and for sort of a few years there, I was away from the plumbing.
What were you taking?
I have a computer science degree.
Right. So,
and not really related to plumbing, but I kind of discovered I don't really want to sit in front of a computer all day. So I like working with my hands. I like managing things. I like something a little more tangible.
Yep.
So,
Love it.
Plumbing business, that's the perfect fit, right?
Yep, totally. So you came into this business, and I remember you guys coming out to I remember you coming with your dad to a couple of live events that we had, like client events, right? I call them family events. I mean, PFC here, we're like one big family. But when you look at it, one of the things that was, when we assessed the business, one of the things that was being looked upon was, what's the next step after you, Steve? Right? Like we were talking about, first things first, and I'm sort of skipping ahead, but first things first was like, okay, Steve.
Yeah.
We got things in chaos here a bit. We got a lack of systems. We got a lack of structure, lack of clarity of roles and responsibilities. There's certain hats you're wearing that, I know you're trying your best, but you just can't be wearing all these hats. And so we worked on a lot of those things. But one of the things we also talked about was, it's so critical when you're looking at handing over a business that you surround yourself with, the right people, right?
Always. Doesn't matter what you're doing.
It doesn't matter what you're doing. You're absolutely right, especially on the financial side of things. So if you're looking at succession planning and you're looking at handing over your business in some form or fashion to your family, it's really important. Here's a little tip. We talked about tips and tricks. You definitely want to engage with somebody on the accounting front of things. Because if you don't, the reality is that you're just going to be trying to do something, solve a problem, and you're not going to have the knowledge to do it, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, and look at it this way. If you're saying to yourself, and these are a couple of things I want on the table, you're saying to yourself, I'll do it later. I'll just do it later. What's the problem with that on your end, Brad? What would you say?
Well, at some point you run out of time.
Yes.
You can only say that so many times before eventually it's time for you to move out, and it's not done yet.
Mm-hmm. And I think the other thing that maybe you can table is at a certain point it just becomes a story, right? Like if somebody says they're going to hand over something to you, like you, Brad, can't do what your dad needs to do, right? Like, true? Like your dad's the one.
That's true. Yeah, he's the one with the control now, and he has to pass that control over in some way.
Right.
But I can't take it. That's
it. So if everybody listening in, it is super. Here's one of the key things. Again, you've got to surround yourself with smart people that are smarter than you. And one of the things, guys, I want you to get out of this. If you're at all thinking about succession planning with especially your family, okay? Don't let it become a story. In other words, we'll get to it. We'll get to it. We'll get to it, because eventually they're going to stop believing you. And these things don't happen in a day. Anybody that tells you there's a magic wand, like, oh, I'm just going to go see the accountant, Brad's going to be good, we'll just check off these boxes, bullshit. Okay. And I hear this all the time. It's such bullshit. I mean, so Steve, back to you.
If I can start, I agree with you. Succession planning from everybody I talk to is a mini year kind of thing. Mm-hmm. And so you've got it, again, strategic plan. You got to look 5-10 years down the road. If I want to have something happen in 10 years, I got to start now. I am not ready to retire now. I still love this stuff. I really love being involved. But at some point, I'm going to go, okay, I'm done. But I want to be prepared at that point. I want to start now, put everything in place, start the process. The other thing is, Brad and a fellow co-worker, Megan, is going to be taking over the business. They have to have control. I remember what it was like working for somebody and wanting to make my own decisions. I hated it. You can only flourish if you have full control. So I know this. Transition's going to happen gradually over the years, but it's going to end, not with me still owning 50%. It's going to end with me holding 0 and 100%. How can they build something on their own with me hanging around going, that's not the way we did stuff, or I don't agree? They need 100% control.
Love it, man.
And all I ask is take pity on your dad, give him something to do if he's bored. Just give him a job, but it's 100% yours. I have to fully hand it over, or how can they flourish and build something in their image or their vision? I've done it to this point, and it's going to transition, but it's got to be their vision now to take it forward.
Dude, like, I don't know, Brad, what you think, but man, like that sounds like a champion CEO to me. Mm-hmm. Like, I'm going to tell you something. I say this on many of these calls with family members of PFC. The person that I talk to is not the same person that I'm talking to now. And I think we talked about that in the beginning when we first started working together. I said, hey, Steve, just to let you know, the man I'm talking to now is going to be different. I mean, your core identity and values, have stayed. But the way that you think, the way that you talk, man, if I could have recorded the way that you talked in the way back.
I can remember a conversation and you said, you're a visionary. And I went, what?
That's right.
And I'm now thinking like a visionary.
And you're talking and you're taking action like it. But the funny thing was, way back then, and again, we've been working together for how long again?
I honestly don't know.
I
It's been
think
a
it's
while.
about over 2 years. Okay.
Oh, no, it's 5.
3 or 5? Oh my
Oh,
God,
yeah,
I got to take a
minimum.
look. Holy shit, we got to take a look at that. So
Yeah.
even from the first kick of the can, I remember saying to you, like, Steve, we got to be putting these things into place right now, because now is when we begin your succession planning. And you're like, what are you talking about? I'm not ready for that. I'm like, no, I'm not saying you got to hand it over next year or the year after, but people, right, Brad? I want you to talk to this. People want to take things over from somebody that either A, wants things to be better, is willing to let go of certain things so that they can become better, right? Because why would you want to take over something that's like just, oh my God, so, oh, wait, my dad leaves and the whole business implodes. Great, I really want to be part of that.
Well, I've seen the amount of stress he goes through and how busy he's been. So, you know, I'd like something a little more finely tuned than that, ideally.
Right, exactly. So let's look at some of the things that we've worked on, right? So let's just talk about some of these systems, you know, some of the structure that you guys have been working on. I mean, even just the profits, like Steve, when we first started, the profits were like, they weren't even there. Right? Yeah, exactly. What's profits? All I knew was line of credit, right? Yeah. So let's talk about some of these things. So let's look at it from a roles and responsibilities perspective. So like Brad, you weren't even really in the picture. Mm-hmm. But now you are, right?
Yeah.
So let's talk about that. Like, so what have been some of the changes that have happened, say, in the roles in people?
Well, I think it's always hard to say in a smaller business like this, because everyone sort of wears a few of the hats in management. Yeah. So, you know, I've been involved in quoting and billing, collecting, totally. You know, jumping on the tools if we get really busy, project management, you know, and in implementing some of these larger projects. So we've made a lot of changes, and I think everyone's been involved in various roles that way. Mm-hmm.
So what would you, if you look at your current, say, the couple of main roles that you have right now today, what would be some of the key roles that you have today?
I guess estimating and project management.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, mm-hmm. Which is huge, right? Yeah. So let's take a look. Let's just take a look at those two. Let's just start with that, right? Mm-hmm. So if you look at how that was done before, Steve, how was that done before?
Oh, I don't really know how it was done before, because somehow we're both still busy doing it.
Yeah, interesting. Interesting. I love it. So it was done before a lot out of the head, like just like a gun shooting. Remember that, Steve?
Last minute, I wouldn't bill for changes. I'll wait till the end of the job, and then next thing you know, a month went by, 6 in a year. Oh, it was a mess. Mm-hmm. It just having more people taking more allows you to get into more details, but to track it better. Mm-hmm. and to it's amazing that one time it was me and my wife, and then it was me and my brother-in-law, and then it was me and my brother-in-law Megan, and then Brad, and we're all still very busy, but we can track everything to a T. We can follow everything. We can make sure everything's built, and somehow with all this extra overhead, we're making more money.
Exactly. Okay. So let's talk about the stuff that you're able to track now, Brad. Like, what are some of the things that you can track?
Well, I would say not only are we profitable, but we have a much better idea of where that profit's coming from.
Yes. Yes. Spoken like a future CEO. Okay. So let's talk about some of these systems and the tracking. Like, what are some of the things that you've been able to track now?
Well, we can keep a much better. We've been using Trello for most of our job tracking.
Yes. Yep.
So,
and let me just pause. Everybody listening in, you know, there's value to listening in on these calls, because, you know, when I say we're going to be giving away tips and tricks literally for free, this one's gold, Jerry. Okay. Trello, guys, it was introduced to this company. It's introduced to all of our clients. It's not the end all, the be all, and let's just position it as such. But it's a free software that literally thousands of the contractors that we've engaged with are using to create checklists and systems. Brad's going to, elaborate on them. But I'm not bullshitting. I don't get any cut on it. Okay. But it's a free system. We use it here at Profit Contractors for certain things. And so if you're TRELLO, again, you want to click the link below. We can get you guys some more insights on that. But tell us a little bit about how you use that and what's it allowing you to do.
Okay, so maybe I'll go over. We have a couple boards on it, and depending on how familiar everyone is with Trello, I'll see if I can describe this. But essentially, every job is a card, and a card contains all of the information about the job.
Yeah.
And we also have lists on the board, and the card gets put on a certain list. So we have lists for potential jobs, jobs we have to look at, jobs we have to quote, jobs we have quoted, jobs we've gotten, and then lists for how far along the job is.
Sounds like Brad, by the way, anybody listening in, just laid out, a flow process from beginning to end, if you didn't get that. So you might want to pause, hit rewind, and go, what did he just say? Yes, he broke it down by different phases, which is one of the things that we teach you guys, right? You got to break things down by phases and then break out those phases. So keep going there, my friend.
Well, the great thing about it is you can watch as that job flows through your system. So it starts way over on the left at the potential jobs, and after you've looked at the job, it moves over. You've quoted the job, it moves over. If you get the job, it moves over, and you can see exactly what jobs are coming up, what jobs you're doing, how busy you are, where everything is. If you haven't been to a job for a while, you haven't heard from the contractor, you might follow up with them, say, hey, do you need us to come back and finish off this job? It gives you a quick visual way of seeing what jobs are ongoing and essentially just the status of your company.
I love it. I'm gonna dig in a little bit on this one because it's important. Think about this for a second. So before your time, Brad,
we had a very, very simple Excel sheet.
Right. How many pieces were missing? How many pieces were left in people's heads? How many pieces, there's a flow to what Brad is talking about, guys, okay? And what the hell does any of this have to do with succession planning? What does it have to do with succession planning?
It gives you a picture of the status of the business, and it gives you a way to control and see, I guess, just the status, and it's a workflow. So it gives some value to the business.
Beautiful. So, and Steve, I want you to comment on this. Understand when you're looking at handing over a business, I'm not going to bullshit here. This is not easy, okay? It's not easy. I'm not saying it's impossible. I'm not saying it's crazy hard. You have to go through, breaking down your business in the flow of how it works. And part of the reason of that is imagine, I don't know where I come up with these analogies. You guys laugh all the time when I come up with them, but I just came up with this one. Like, imagine we're back in the old Western days and, we're riding this carriage and, Steve's riding this carriage, but the carriage is like a 6-horse carriage. So there's 6 horses, there's 6 reins, and he's going in this direction. Everybody in this call, to be able to hand over the reins. So Brad's sitting right beside him, and Brad's going, okay, Dad, hand them over. It doesn't work like that. It's like, okay, what's this rein do? Well, that's tracking, how many, quotes we have. What's this rein do? Well, how many did we win? What's this rein do? Like, guys, he has to hand over those reins. And the operations of a business is one of the most important things that has to be properly handed over. If all those reins only exist invisibly in Steve's head, it is impossible for Steve to hand over the reins. It makes sense, Brad?
Yeah.
Totally. So Steve, back to you. This is, we need to make sure on the succession planning, yes, we get involved with the right people as far as the financial aspects of it. Yes, we're going to have to look at the legal aspects of it as well. But from an operational perspective, everybody listening in on this call, this has to do with succession planning, and this has to do with the profitability of a business. Notice that Brad said, not Steve, Brad said, we know where the profits are coming from. It's because Brad has gotten involved in the systems, in the operations, and so has the rest of the team. Is this true, Brad?
Yeah.
Right. So, you know, Steve, how important is it that you get stuff out of your head and get your team involved?
Oh, it's 100% important. You can't pass something over in your head unless it's a tangible thing. It's not passing over. Nothing, doesn't matter what you're in. If it's in your head, it's not transferable. It's got to go down to some sort of documents, anything. Heads are okay, but it's not great.
Yeah, and Steve, talk to again, Brad. I want your thoughts on this because I want you to give us your perspective of this topic. What is the value of a business if all that stuff we just talked about, which is, by the way, that's just a piece of it, operations, right?
Mm-hmm.
But how valuable is a business if all that stuff is invisible?
It's just whatever assets the business has.
Totally. Because what happens if Steve's not there and it's just invisible?
Mm-hmm. Well, the whole thing falls apart.
Totally. And look, Steve, talk a little bit about, I never forget, when we started putting these systems in place, I remember you getting all excited and you were nervous. I never forget this, the first trip going down to Vegas.
Yeah. Yep. First time leaving.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not bad. When I go away, I can actually forget the business. It's nothing I work on, I just can't. But the thought of leaving the business for a week was scary. And now, until COVID hit, I was leaving the business for 2 weeks. I was going a week here. And I go and I don't even think about it.
And by the way, everybody be clear. Some contractors, sorry to interrupt that. Some contractors, the only way, and if you're listening on this, and the only way for you to do that is to shut the business down. I see it all the time. Or just close the doors, no phone calls, no nothing. Once we finish this job, I'm taking a vacation. And then when I come back, I'm going to start another job. But in between that time, we got to stop. That's not what happened with you. We put the systems in place. You came back, talk about these 2 weeks vacations. You come back, and is the business still growing, Steve?
The business is growing, and there might be 1 or 2 pieces of paper on my desk. Like, that's it. Done. Half a day, I'm up and running again. Like it. I'd like to say something though. All this systems and all this putting into place, it's not me. I always thought I could do everything, and I'll get to it. I had a waiting list. Like 5 years, stuff has been on my waiting list. The only way all this stuff got done is bringing in more people. Brad's being one of them. Megan's being one of them. They then have put in the systems that I wanted to put in, but they then are creating the value in the very business they're going to take over. And because they're involved, and this is the interesting thing, I brought them in. I don't have to tell them to put stuff in. They just grab it and run with it and go, Steve, we're taking care of this. Oh, really? Oh, that's nice. And we're taking care of that. That gradually I found a lot of stuff was leaving me, not because I told them to do it. They just took it from me. So it's a natural progression, and then they'll just take the business from me too. So
no. So guys, listening to what Steve is saying, and is that true, Brad?
Yeah. No, I'm always itching to take over various aspects and change them, improve them. Sometimes just do things my way. but
a systemized way.
Yeah.
Right? But a systemized way. So, well, it helps with your background. Guys, understand that everybody listening on this call, I know you struggle right now, and I want your comments here, boys, is people will say there's no good people out there. If they want it done, they got to do it themselves. They think that as an owner, they got to have all these answers, and they put a shitload of weight on themselves, Steve, where it's like, I got to solve this and solve that. And I remember us having calls, and I'm like, Steve, you're fired. You're like, what? Yeah. You're not the integrator. What's an integrator? And I'd be like, you're the visionary guy.
Yeah, I remember that.
And you're like, what's an integrator? Brad's an integrator. Okay. So Brad's going to create the systems. I'm going to help him. Let's identify, the Trello, this and this and this. But Brad's going to do it because, Steve, no offense, dude, you suck at it, and that's not your gift. So stop trying to do stuff that you're not. You just don't have the ability to do. And this is my last thing I want to hear comments is that you're listening in on this, and you're an owner of a contracting business. Get over it that you think that you got to be the superhero and be good at it all. That's the worst freaking thing you could be thinking. What do you have to say to that, guys?
Can I make a comment, Brad, about the conversation we had about 3 months in when we had the conversation about taking over the business.
Yeah.
Well, what it is Brad started back with the business. And about, I can't remember, 3-4 months, I sat down with Brad. Actually, we were taking a drive to look at a job. And I said, would you be interested in taking over the business? I never want to force something. It's always got to be.
By the way, that came out of one of our coaching sessions.
Yeah.
So you're going to have this conversation with Brad.
Yeah. And we had a conversation. And if I can be honest, Brad said, but Dad, I'm not you. I don't have what you have. And I said, Brad, the business doesn't need what I have anymore. It needs what you have that I can't do. In building terms, I do the footings, the foundation, the framing, the insulation. That's me. I'm a creator that way. But then Brad does the drywall, the painting, the cupboards, the flooring, the trim. He refines and makes it better. I can't do what Brad does, and he can't do what I do. But the business doesn't need me as much anymore. It needs what Brad's talents are. And I still remember having that conversation.
I was actually thinking about that one too, because that was actually a big confidence boost for me, because that was a big worry of mine. That because I don't think I could start the business the same way you have, but I do think I could do much more to improve and fine tune it than you have.
Oh, definitely. You're so much better than me.
And I get, if that's what we need now, that works out perfectly for the succession.
Yeah.
Isn't that interesting? So if picture somebody's listening in on this, what would be the principle that you'd want them to get out of that conversation right there, Brad?
Well, there's a few, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Open communication, know your roles and your strengths and what you can and can't do.
Yeah.
In my case, I guess I'd consider myself a bit more of an optimizer than, and that's a role that I can do well.
Love it. I mean, how important was it that your dad approached you like that?
Well, it made all the difference in the world.
Mm-hmm.
Before that, it had always been in the back of my mind that I wasn't sure if I could do that. I wasn't sure I could take it over.
Yep.
And
totally. So, and Steve, on your end, what would you have to say on that front?
Understand who you are. Understand that you're not the be all and end all, and you need the gifts and talents of other people. Understand when to step back. And I shouldn't say I'm not. In some ways, I'm a control freak. But for anything to flourish, you got to let your team go with what they want to go with, and just trust them, because everybody's working together to create something. So you got to give people control so they can bring their own particular skill sets to it.
Yeah. I
only have one way of looking at stuff. Other people have different ways that are probably better that I don't even think about unless I talk to them and hear them and let them go with it. So I don't know. That's just a thought.
Well, no. And I think one thing I want you guys to recognize, listening in, is that it didn't come lightly. I'm just going to go back to something that I just want to highlight. again, if you guys want some more info, things of that nature, you want some similar help, things of that nature, see if you're, a good fit for Proffer Contractors. We can help you. Great. Regardless, I just highly recommend you guys, don't do it alone and get help. Okay. So Steve and I had lots of calls leading up to that conversation, by the way, Brad.
Mm-hmm.
Lots of calls, because let's face it, and correct me if I'm wrong here, Steve, but there was aspects of this where, Steve, you didn't have confidence in yourself.
Oh, 100%.
Right. And part of the reason you didn't have confidence is because you kept on trying to do things that really wasn't part of who you were. Right.
Yeah.
So and it wasn't that they weren't needed for the business. It's that you were just trying to be this person that you weren't. And we had, if you're on this call and you're listening, come to grips with, you have strengths. Okay, I don't want to call them, you also have weaknesses, but you have areas where you just aren't as strong as other people, or you're not inclined. Stop fucking hitting your head in the fucking wall going, oh man, I can't do this. I can't do this. Well, you're not supposed to do it. Other people are supposed to help you do it. And so, Steve, leading up to that, I mean, maybe you can just talk to that. Like, it takes an identity shift.
Oh, I can remember too. You talked about the visionary and integrator. I still remember that, because up until that point, Andrew, I never seen myself as a boss. I never seen myself as a visionary.
Yeah.
I actually lacked a lot of confidence in I knew what I created, but I just sort of thought it happened through hard work, not through anything else. And there's a whole mind shift, and I'm still on that journey, big time.
For sure.
Of realizing who I am, that I have to be the visionary or the leadership. Otherwise, we're just adrift as a company.
Mm-hmm.
That unless I can provide direction, we're going to be in the same spot we were 10 years ago. You sort of led me into this planning, this strategic, this visionary, helping me grasp who I really was that I didn't even recognize in myself.
Mm.
So it's that's a major, Andrew. And like I said, I've still got a long way to go that way.
We all do. We all do. But I think the core of this, and Brad, I'd like you to speak to it, is you have to get yourself moving forward. And, I talk about that progress feeds passion, right? And passion feeds progress. You were stuck.
Yes.
And actually, you were getting more stuck, like quicksand. Like, you're getting tired. You were going through a lot. You're going through some personal challenges and things of that nature. And there's a lot. But think about this. Let's give credit where credit is due. You raised your hand for help. True?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Right. Number one, you showed up. You said, hey, I can't do this anymore. Like, hey, this is resonating with me. I got to do something about it. So you did something about it, right? And that first step was like, hey, Andrew, I want to have a chat with you. Or like, even whatever that is for anybody listening in, you got to have some form of progress. Otherwise, the passion is going to be sucked right out of you, okay? So you took the next steps. Then you were willing to listen. And it took some time, because like it does. It takes time. It's an identity.
Change your paradigm.
Yeah, it's a paradigm shift. You've been telling yourself a story for fucking decades. And you were able to go, wait a second, I'm going to rewrite this story. This is bullshit. And then it was like, okay, so now what do I do about it? And there was lots of things that we did, but one of the things was that conversation with Brad.
Yeah.
And now Brad, you're on this call. Like, listening to that, Brad, what I just said, like, what is that? What goes through your mind hearing this?
Well, I think learning to change your mind is probably one of the hardest things you can do.
Mm-hmm.
And it does take sometimes someone else to help push you in the right direction.
Why do you think that is?
I think you can get stuck in your own thoughts.
Mm-hmm.
You get kind of stuck in a rut, and you need someone else to help push you out of it.
Well said, dude. I think it's as simple as that. You're stuck in a rut, right? You said it so well. You're stuck in your own thoughts. You need somebody else's thoughts.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, all you have is your own thoughts.
Yeah, you get stuck in almost a loop, and you need someone to push you out of that.
Well said, man. And then from that perspective, start wrapping this up is like, when you look at there's a couple of key things I want to highlight here. I hope people have gotten this. And that's why I highlight it. I never know what's going to come out of these sessions. So, and I want you guys to highlight some things that you got out of this. Is one thing is that Steve is looking at things going, I'm handing over something, and that's something I'm handing over is going to become, I'm handing over this business. It's going to take time. I need to surround myself with the right people, right experts. But I love what you said, Steve. I'm trying to put in the words here where you said, this business is going to become Brad's and Megan's vision. This is going to become what, beyond you. The fact that you're okay with that, I think, is a really good testament of those listening in to realize that when that succession plan happens, it's no longer your vision. Maybe your vision was, maybe the part of the vision is like, I'm leaving a legacy. Okay, perfect. But where the company's going to go now is Brad and Megan's. So that's huge, right, guys?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Brad, would you buy into saying, no, it has to always be my vision. I'm going to come in and bug you all the time?
Well, yeah, that just wouldn't work. I wouldn't have the passion for it.
Right. So people, if you're listening going, oh man, the succession plan didn't work for me. My kids didn't buy in. Ask yourself, like, guys, grab a mirror, look in the mirror and ask yourself some questions. Am I doing some of this shit that they just covered off in this podcast? If it's like, this stuff's bullshit, that's why you're still where you're at. Okay. Another thing, I'll give two more, and then I want you guys to pipe in, is don't try and be somebody else. Don't try and be somebody else's strengths that you can't be. Be the strength that you're meant to be. You're a visionary person, Steve. It took a while for you to get that, but look at how far this business has gone because you came to the realization that you're not the integrator. It's huge, massive. Okay.
Yeah.
And I guess one of the last ones I'm going to say is that, you've really, you've been willing to face, both of you, the fact that it's an ongoing process. Like the business is always evolving. If you're listening on these podcasts, you probably hear, you've never heard somebody go, the business is perfect, because that's bullshit. It's always evolving. So what would you guys say either to those points or anything that you would add, 1 or 2 points to somebody listening in going, man, like, how do I do this? What would you, what would you suggest as next steps? Like, what would you have to say to that, Brad? Somebody's listening in there, like where your dad was maybe back before you started.
I would say take pretty much any step towards progress. Because as long as you can make some small change, that's going to give you a bit more motivation. It might give you a bit more time, and it'll help you keep moving forward. It becomes a snowball effect. But you have to take the first step. You have to do something to improve the situation or improve the business. Otherwise, you're still stuck.
What happens if they're in that closed loop, though?
Well, reach out for help.
Yeah. I love it, man. Love it.
Even if that's just listening to a podcast.
Yes.
To give you that push. It doesn't have to be a literal coach, but
that's right.
It needs to be something to change your thinking or something to change your processes.
Yeah, the fact that you're listening to this podcast, whoever the listener is a sign, if you're still listening to it, is a sign that you're actually making progress. Because you're hearing things that are not your thoughts. Right? There's somebody else's thoughts, right, Brad? Really? I never thought of it that way. Yeah, and that's progress. So awesome. Recognize it too, right? And I think
you have to recognize what it is.
Yeah, I think that's huge, man. I think a big part of progress is like stopping and going, I'm making progress.
Mhm.
Right? So I love it, man. Dude, it's been awesome working with you, Brad. And it was, I never forget when I first met you. It was freaking crazy. I remember your dad at the bar, and I said, Steve, and Steve comes over. I don't know if you remember this, Steve, but there's things I remember, and my wife's like, I cannot believe that you remember that stuff, but you can't remember freaking loaf of bread. I'm like, babes, that's the way it is. You know what, babe? I'm like, hey, Jen, you should listen to this one. Right? I'm Steve. I'm the visionary guy, right? So, but I remember pulling you over and going, Steve, come here. And he's like, yeah, what's up, man? I'm like, that's it. That's the integrator. What the fuck? What are you talking about? Right there, your son. Your son is not you. He's the systems guy. And you were like, I'm like, yes, we have to have a call, right? I don't know. You remember that, Steve?
Not quite that, but the concept, yeah.
Yeah, for sure, right? For sure. So, Steve, what would you have to say? Either based upon what we covered off today, what would you say to people listening?
I'm going to give some advice that's fundamental to me, and then I got something personal to add. Okay. My mistake was I was thinking cheap. I was thinking I could do everything myself. I had enough hours in the day, and also because I was cheap thinking that I couldn't afford somebody else, that I wasn't making profit now. Bringing in someone else just going to drive me deeper in the hole. That has led to so much stress, so much work, so many problems. The best thing you can learn is to surround yourself and hire excellent people. Be the management, be the work. That's the only thing that's changed other than outside of me, because you can spend, let's say, 30,000 on a person, but they'll return 50 or 60. And I did not get that concept for 20 years. And just don't try to do everything yourself. Hire good people. And if I can leave with one real personal stuff, when we're talking succession plan and you say you got to let your vision go, all parents out there raise kids. And for a while, you control your kids to a certain extent. They hit the teenage years and they fight for it. That's great. You want to see that. And then they leave home. They can't carry your vision anymore. They carry their own vision of their life. It's their life, and it's a joy. Anybody who isn't a parent, watching your kids grow up and becoming the man or woman they're supposed to be, that's a great joy. And now Brad is going to have a daughter within a week. And I get to watch the next generation of Brad raising his daughter, and what I'm so interested in who she's going to be and where she's going to go and what her life is going to look like her vision. It's totally outside of me. I just get to enjoy it now. It's one of the greatest things in life.
Oh my God, dude, you're going to make me cry. No, I'm serious. Like, everybody listening, think about this. Like, Steve's getting the business to run more and more without him for so many purposes. How many people are out there? I mean, my kids are younger than Brad, right? I got an 18-year-old, I got a 15-year-old. So you're getting me to think differently because I'm not where you're at. But for those of you that are approaching becoming a grandparent, or you're already a grandparent in some form or fashion, I mean, how valuable is it of what you just heard? Like, that Steve gets to actually be present, not just with his son, but with his grandchildren, right? Like, if that old business had continued, that let's call it that kryptonite, or that, those problems and the environment on the family would have actually continued to the next generation.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Now your daughter, Brad, doesn't have to experience that.
No, that's something I've thought about a lot recently.
Really?
I don't want to get involved in a business if it's going to suck up all my time that way. But I think given where we are now, that's not going to happen.
Well, and as well, so the time, right? We talk about get your profits to pay for your freedom. I talk about, the purpose of a business is like 3 core components. I'm sure there's subsets. I know there are, but just 3. They give you the freedom to do the things the way that you want them to be, live the lifestyle that you want, and be able to do the things you want with your family the way that you want, the control, to have the business, be the business that you want, right? And that means, you don't have to, if Brad doesn't want to have a 100-person employee business, wants to keep it small, whatever that vision is, have the control, right? And have the wealth so that you can live it in the style that you want. It's going to be different for everybody, but I mean, Brad, the fact that you just brought this up at the end is so cool, right? It's like, you've been thinking about that, right? And you wouldn't have bought into this because part of your vision is beyond the business. It's your family.
Yeah. I'm right at the start. Anytime this week, I'm becoming a parent.
That's freaking amazing, dude. It's wild.
Mm-hmm.
So, Steve, hats off to you. Hats off to you, Brad, that, that you've created, that you've been willing to shift your thinking, take the right action, get the right help, not to do it alone, and really be able to create a better environment and better life for yourself, for the next the next generation being Brad, for the next generation being your grandchildren. Like, dude, that's some serious, this is some pretty deep stuff.
Yeah, that's life.
And look at the pictures, everybody. I know if you're watching this, if you're just hearing the audio, there's a whiteboard behind Steve. And what's on the whiteboard, Steve?
Profit for contractors.
No, the pictures.
These are not actually.
Those are the wrong pictures.
Oh, those are the wrong pictures.
These are my nieces and nephews.
Still.
I'm going to have the first granddaughter, so then she's going to go up there.
I think there is actually a picture on your desk of me and my brother. Yeah, there we go.
There we go.
No, but even if it's the nieces and nephews, though, right? Like, that you have the time to go and participate.
Yeah.
Like, that's life, the final thing. I just talked to somebody the other day, and they said that their mentor passed away. And I won't say who it is, but I said, oh, well, sorry to hear that. He says, it's really funny. I look back and I question whether or not that person should have been my mentor. What do you mean? He says, well, last month I met with him. The first time he ever told me this. He said, because he was ill. Okay, so he knew the clock was ticking, like, very close. And he was talking with this person, close friend and mentor, he's mentoring and stuff. He goes, I got to tell you something before I pass away. And I should have told you this a long time ago because I feel very bad about it. He goes, what's that? He says, well, I've only mentored you on business. And I've been through 2 marriages, had a heart attack, and now I'm about to die. I'm in my early 60s. So I screwed up. He goes, what? He's like, yeah, I screwed up. It's not all about business. I missed out on so many things. I have no grandchildren. I have no family. I'm dying, on this deathbed, and I've got nobody around me. Like, all the riches, all the business, all the time I put in. Yes, I've got a lot of skills and insights in business, but I've got 0 on life. So you guys aren't living that picture. And that's a pretty sad thing to be saying right now, but I mean, that we all have this timeline. And you guys are on the right path, man. I think it's awesome. So thank you very much, guys, for the session and for the podcast. And Brad, congratulations in advance. Super exciting time for you, Dave.
Thank you very much. I'm really excited.
I bet you nervous?
Of course, yeah.
Yeah, for sure, man.
I've become a lot more nervous in the last week or two.
You think?
We've read all kinds of books, watched all sorts of videos on raising kids and birth process, and what color the baby's poop is supposed to be, all kinds of stuff. And I was feeling prepared until it came to the point where it can actually happen any day now.
You know what the interesting thing is? Trello board ain't going to help you, my friend, too much in this one. Okay? Woo! Okay, and Steve-O, congratulations. Being a grandfather, exciting times because you actually are able to be excited about it. And keep up the great work, guys. Love you. Catch you on the flip side.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Later, man. Thanks, man. Bye.